Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of The World Where We Live. I'm Jared Freeland, as you loyalists would probably know by now. This is John Alcock, and we are here to once again espouse our radical political views for everybody to hear, whether you want to or not, and if you don't, you feel free to come on the program and tell us exactly how wrong we are.
Smash that dislike button.
But counterproductive there, maybe. But, look, tonight we are going to talk about a few things that, bringing it, for the first two topics, we're going to bring it back to what's been happening in the last week. So, we hear that the settlement at Hui Matau, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Still haven't mastered that so far.
Close enough.
So we'll call it Matau for short.
Yeah.
And basically, then perhaps at the end we'll have a bit of a look back over the year that was. It's not going to be a completely definitive one. We'll save that for
to the end of the year yet. We'll get there, and then we'll do a wrap-up episode.
I feel I feel most people have seen all they want to of 2020 so far.
Though.
But look, for a kickoff, a more important topic, and one that's been in the news quite a lot this week. A climate emergency has today been called by the New Zealand government. What do we have to say about that?
Well, it's quite clearly just obvious virtue signalling from Jacinda Ardern. Because, as Mike Hosking and a few other people, Helen Duplessis-Annan, have pointed out as well, it is merely a rehash of what they announced last time. And it's the same bloody thing over again. So they've announced a climate emergency to make it sound bigger and better. It's like, it's an emergency. We've got to do something right now. But if you do the actual figures, I think New Zealand is responsible for 0.002 of global emissions. And out of that, the farmers and all the people that Jacinda is going after produce 0.001 of the emissions. So that means something like 0.00002% of the emissions globally is related to us in New Zealand. So we're going to entirely cripple our economy, we're going to cripple our industry, we're going to cripple our farmers with all these carbon credit taxes to make them completely uneconomically efficient. And we're going to do this to reduce carbon dioxide and methane emissions into the air by such an insignificant amount that no one will notice. And the reason why we're doing this is so that we can be global leaders in the climate emergency that we're all having right now. Guys, plants and crops have never done better than they have right now because there's more carbon in the air. And plants are made out of carbon. So they take the carbon and they sequester it into the plants. That's what makes the biggest forests ever. That's what makes the biggest crops ever. Go and talk to a farmer. Don't listen to all these radical bloody leftists that live in cities and think that food comes from supermarkets.
It's entirely delusional to think that by somehow being global leaders we will inspire other countries to, I guess, follow our lead and do the same thing. They won't. If we cripple our economy, if we make it impossible to do farming, to do agriculture, to do fishing, anything else you could think of, the big boys, if that's what we want to call them, China, Russia, other countries, developing countries who give zero damns about climate and have made absolute lip service in the Paris Climate Agreement. I believe that the pledge by the Chinese was that they would not increase their output of emissions they would stop increasing it after the year 2030. So basically what that means is that from 2015, for the next 15 years up to 2030, they can increase the emissions all they want to a ridiculously high level, and only after that, they won't look at reducing it, they'll just look at not increasing it from beyond that.
Maintaining it.
So, really, we won't be inspiring anybody. We will be opening a whole lot of opportunity for other people to exploit us and to take over. If they regulate the farming out of business here, they'll do it in other countries who are not burdened by the ridiculous regulations, and the climate doesn't win, the New Zealand economy doesn't win, the New Zealand people don't win, and really at the end of the day, yeah, we're global leaders, but only in economic deprivation and hardship. Is that anything to be proud of? I wasn't aware it was.
That's why poverty is increasing in New Zealand, despite Jacinda's best efforts to reduce poverty and child poverty. Look, so you have to compete on economic grounds. You have to. Everything is related to economics, and that's just the way that it is. And that is the fundamental nature of reality. So, you look at China, right? Well, they don't care about how much carbon they pumped in the atmosphere. They don't care about how much slave labor that they introduce over there and use slave labor to compete with us and steal all our manufacturing jobs because we want cheaper goods. We get them to British China. What's their minimum wage? Do you know what the minimum wage is? Sure shit ain't 80, 90 an hour, and that's for bloody certain. But all the manufacturing is going there. That's what Trump is trying to point out for a long time. All the manufacturing is going over there. All our goods are going over there. We produce primary goods. We send them to China to get value added, and then they sell them back to us for the additional value. This is completely insane. We need to be able to be competitive with other markets, and that's not to say that you completely ignore the environment or any other socioeconomic effects. That's to say that all of those effects need to be taken into account. So if you have a really high minimum wage, then you do need to introduce tariffs on other people who do not support living wages or higher minimum wages for your worker population. I'm actually down with that. We want people to do better, not worse. But if everybody's getting paid $1 an hour in China to manufacture t-shirts and Nike shoes and Apple products and Microsoft products and Lenovo products, whatever, from China to us, and we're not manufacturing any of that because our minimum wage is so high that it excludes us from the market entirely, who's getting screwed here? The lowest socioeconomic people in society are getting screwed here. It's the people that work in those factories, that rely on those jobs to produce income for their families. They are the ones that are getting screwed here. It's not the Chinese, because they're making a hell of a lot more money in those factories than they would be if they're working in the fields. But we're not that kind of population. And these regulations and these free trade agreements hurt New Zealanders the most. It makes things cheaper, but it also makes them entirely reliant on government subsidies, the dole, the invalid's benefit of all our social programs to be able to live at all. And it's incredibly destructive to our own population. We need to stop doing this. We need to be more competitive in the global market. We need to make sure that we look after our New Zealanders first, instead of looking after everybody else around the world and trying to lead by example. We have so many problems here. You can't lead by example until you've solved the problems in your country first, and we are not at that stage.
And that's interesting when it comes to virtue signalling, because it was the Green Party who accused the ACT Party, of virtue signalling when David Seymour said that politicians should work, 3 days a week instead of 4.
That was Simon Court. He said that today in Parliament. He
Really?
said, you look at the Parliament. I watched the video today. Simon Court actually stood up in Parliament. David Seymour might have said this as well, but Simon Court, who is the Environmental Minister for the ACT Party, actually said this. So look, let's look at the parliamentary calendar. Why are we doing so much travel all the time? So I think he said something, don't quote me on this, go and have a look at what Simon Court's speech actually was. But he said you can save a huge amount of carbon emissions by not having the MPs fly back and forwards all over the place. And the biggest offenders of that is the Greens Party. Because do as I say, not as I do.
That's right. One law for thee, another law for me. But I think going back to the products and the manufacturing, I see that this relates to a wider issue of people who enjoy all the benefits of living in the modern world. They live in a first world country. They have more opportunity than anybody else has had throughout the entire history of mankind. They use their smartphones. They wear clothes that were made cheaply overseas, consuming valuable resources that they are against the consumption of, or at least they claim to be. And I see them bagging on New Zealand farmers. I see them bagging on the working class. If you happen to work in a coal mine because it's the only sort of job that you're able to do, and they.
I've got to say something on the topic of coal since you brought it up.
Absolutely.
Apparently, they're in the government service right now. There are 200 coal-fired boilers to provide room heating and hot water. Are you kidding me? Bloody Jacinda has said she's going to go around and start replacing all this. But I can't believe it's gotten to this bloody stage now where there's still 200 coal-fired burners. What the hell are you guys doing? Clean your own room before trying to clean mine.
Well, the irony is they can replace it with electric heaters, but if the electricity is being derived from coal at the same time...
Or gas and oil that we have to import from bloody Singapore, or where the hell we're getting our coal from these days.
Well, if they're going to shut down Marsden Point, we're going to have to get all of our LPG from Singapore, but that's a bit beyond the scope. I think my point is that there are so many people, so many environmentalists, and look, not many people are against the environment, conserving the environment, not at all. But what turns them off the course is putting up with all these radical environmentalists who are so hateful and hostile toward other people and call upon others to make sacrifices so they don't have to. I want all the coal miners out of work. I want other people to abandon their livelihood, their culture, their society, their wealth, so I don't have to do anything. My activism, my level of actually getting out and doing anything is posting stuff on Facebook and voting for, well, apparently not so green parties given all the travel they do and the ineptitude of a lot of their policies.
It's because these people don't do anything. They don't do anything. They're nameless, faceless cogs in some giant corporate wheel, and they work in the Auckland CBD predominantly. And they don't produce anything. They rely on other people to produce all their food, all their clothes, all their water, and they don't care if they're being produced at slave labor rates in third world countries. They don't care. Because I can buy my t-shirts. I can buy the latest fancy product. I can buy the latest fancy iPhone, the latest laptop. They don't care. Because they don't actually produce anything when they're at work. They just shuffle little bits of paper around and send emails to people all day, but they never actually do any work. And that is why you see the majority of left-wing Marxist support in large cities. Because that covers people who are unproductive. For actual proper Marxism, those people would be made to do something productive as well. But that is why you don't see left-wing support in rural areas. Because the people that live in rural areas and actually do the bloody work in the first place know what the value of $1 is, and they know what the value of an hour is. And they know how much effort they have to put in to produce your steak, your beef, your clothes, your corn, your rice, whatever it is that you're consuming in these giant cities. They know what that value is. And that's why the people that vote the left live in cities, and the people that vote the right live in the real world.
And that's been observed in many countries. America, I think, is the most obvious. Most of the interior, the rural areas of America, it's Republican. And, hey, that's the thing. But in terms of real policy, declaring the climate emergency, well, all the government vehicles are going to be electric. Well, I say again, where are they getting the electricity? Is that being
coal in New Zealand? Coal, guys, coal. We're burning coal to inefficiently charge an electric battery in an electric car that we're then going to drive around the roads, and you're telling me that that is cleaner than fuel, gas, diesel? That's what you're telling me. Because you're wrong, and that's insane.
We can go further into the debunkings, even things like battery technology. They reckon batteries are going to save us. No, and you start to get into the limits of the laws of physics. There is a limit to the amount of energy you can store in a small...
It comes down to energy density. That's all it comes down to. Batteries are less energy dense than petrol and diesel. But what you should strive to do is not have everything running on petrol or diesel. You should strive to use the appropriate fuel for the appropriate application. You can't use batteries in planes. You need to use aviation fuel. You can't use batteries in really big, long-distance trucks. You can't do it. It's not possible due to the energy density of the material that you're using. But there are some really good applications for batteries. Round town fleets of cars, when you're not doing huge amounts of mileage, when you're staying relatively close to home, if you're just driving to work and back, you just pop to the shops and back. That's a really good idea. Appropriate fuels for appropriate applications. That's what we need to do. Not just, we're going to do only this one thing over here and do nothing else. That path is insane. You can't do that. Appropriate fuels for appropriate application. We need to move away from our coal and oil-fired and gas-fired power plants into nuclear energy, because that is much cleaner and much more efficient than what we're doing with the coal and gas-fired plants. By a huge amount. And it's also the safest production of energy on the planet. And on top of that, that's not the final goal. We need to use fission, which is the nuclear energy that we use now, to move to fusion. But you need a ton of energy to move to fusion, so you have to go through fission on the way there. That's what we have to do.
Well, of course, we can't do anything nuclear because the Labour Party would not want to go back on their famous legacy. So we'll see how it plans out. I don't think there's going to be much of a change given the climate emergency. Now, Hui Matau.
Dear God, what are we doing?
The consultants, it came out today that the consultants on the matter were being paid up to $325 an hour of taxpayer money to try and sort this out.
Why do we need consultants for this?
I have no idea.
That's a very good question, because I'm pretty sure property rights have already sorted this in the courts for, since the Magna Carta. I'm absolutely serious about that. This has been settled in property law for so long, I don't know why we need consultants to do this. Jacinda can come and pay me, and I'll tell her what the bloody answer is. Know what the answer is. Did Fletcher's buy this property? Yes? Okay. Then they can do whatever they want with it as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. Right. Are they doing that? Yes. Case closed. This is not something that we should need to be paying anybody about. This undermines the fundamental property rights of all Western civilization, and particularly in New Zealand. We have property rights for a reason. Why is Jacinda getting involved with this? Native, Maori, tribal rights? The hell are you talking about? Fletcher's bought this place. They paid fair market value for it when they bought it. What are you doing, Jacinda? Why are you interfering with property rights? This is already settled.
And this thing, beyond property rights, if you actually look at the specifics, there are going to be people arguing, camps arguing, yes, it is hurting people and things like that because the land's sacred, it's tapu. Okay, fair enough. So they might put forth that argument, a cultural one? Absolutely. You know who doesn't agree with them? The Maori families who were earmarked to have social housing that was going to be built at that site for them.
Or the 10,000 people who are going to get jobs as a result of this?
And now they're going to have to wait for, I don't know, possibly indefinitely, because they're not going to get their houses. So really, it isn't a black and white issue. And people who are saying, oh, it's this wonderful thing, they're going to give the land back and they're not going to build anything on it, well, no, it doesn't necessarily help everybody.
How can you house the people that need to live in this area if you don't build anything? This is the most retarded argument I've heard ever, and it's why Northland is the most impoverished place in New Zealand, because everything is tapu and everything is sacred. So you can't build on it, you can't exploit the resources of the land, you can't use your labour to build something on it, you can't do anything. This is insane. Oh, but we're poor, so just give us money. No. You own a bunch of land, you go and mix your labour with that land and then sell that property. That's how property rights work. And I don't really care what your tribal background is at all. I don't care. Produce something that you can sell to other people. Go away. I'm absolutely done with this crap of we're just going to take stuff that you produce with your labour and your land and we're going to give it to us, where we don't produce anything with our labour or land at all. And not because those people don't want to work, but because the tribal leaders prevent them from working. Do you guys understand that your tribal leaders are hurting you? They're hurting you. Do you get that? This is insane. completely beyond rational and beyond reason. I just don't know how else to put it to you guys. You have to mix your labor with some kind of property to produce something that you can sell to other people. And you can do that in an environmentally sustainable way. You can protect the tapu of your land. You can protect the mana that's in your people in your land. You can do this. But you have to actually produce something from this land. Do it in a sustainable way. Make sure that you build buildings that are green and environmental and that don't damage the land. But you have to do something. You can't just say we're going to keep this pristine and untouched forever, but what we're going to do to pay for our choices is to take resources off other people and give them to us. That's called theft.
And that's the thing. You know, these sorts of points go over the heads of people who are firm in their beliefs. But at the end of the day, no, it isn't racist. The fact that nobody wants to invest in Maori land and Northland is because if you had a choice between land that was subject to this inordinate amount of rules dictating what you can use it for, what you can do in it, and right next to it is a plot of land with no such rules, you will take the land with no such rules. It will be worth infinitely more because you can actually do stuff with it. It's basic economics, and really, whether it's for cultural reasons or political reasons, no. Nobody should be able to kick up a fuss and make a protest and overrule anybody's property rights. What happens next?
I agree, but you can do both. You can do both. You can have your local cultural values. You can have your environmental values.
Certainly it's possible, yeah.
You can do both, but you need to use the resources that you have to produce something that you can trade with other people for the things that you need. You need petroleum. Well, you've got to run cars. Okay, well, you've definitely got cars. You've got chainsaws, you've got people, you've got to feed them, you've got rice, potatoes. You want to have big hungies and things? Good shit. Go and do that. But you need to produce something that you can trade for the resources that you need from other people that you can't produce yourself. That's the essence of trade. And I'm totally fine with you calling it Maori tribal land. Go for it. What are you producing? What do you need from other people? What do you need from me? What can I buy and trade from you so that you get the resources that you need? That's the question.
And I think it goes without saying, the popular perception of Maori culture is massively positive. Here and overseas, you absolutely have the opportunity to trade things, to trade artifacts, to anything to celebrate your culture. And look, it is already a massive industry, highly profitable industry. And what I think that would go a great deal toward helping the problems in those communities.
100%, man. 100%.
Horrible problems of socioeconomic deprivation that we see. And would also go a great deal into helping people in those communities break away from dependence on the government, to try and solve their problems for them and throw a whole lot of money to very little effect.
That's a really good point. When did the Maori people ever decide that they were going to be slaves to the government? Because that's what you're doing now.
Nobody wants to be a slave to the government.
Nobody wants to be a slave to the government. Why are you forcing your own populace to be slaves to the government, to be entirely dependent on the government? I don't see any reason for this. I don't see any reason for this. You are fully capable. You're plenty smart enough. There's tons of people that can get out there and do this kind of work. And you're hamstringing your own population into dependency on the New Zealand government. I thought you wanted sovereignty. I thought you wanted control over your own environment. Then do it. Stop being slaves to labour. Because that's what you're doing. You're putting yourself into self-enforced servitude where you have to rely on the wind's benefit? You bloody kidding me? You're better than that, and I know you're better than that.
Everybody's better than that. This is it goes back to the spirit of mankind, the human spirit. We don't want to be dependent. We want to stand up for ourselves. We want to fight for ourselves. And the more we see the human spirit in action, the better the results are. And that's 2 topics down.
You want to do a third one quickly?
Let's have a happy one.
Yeah, have a happy one. Okay, I'm down for a happy one. What do you talk about as a bit of a happy one? You want to do a quick year interview? What's your favourite thing from 2020?
Let's try and look at some of the positive things from
what's happened in 2020.
This crazy year
That's
we've
been
had.
a little bit more fun. Look, everybody gets down on 2020. Oh, it's the worst year ever. No, it's not.
No.
Get over yourself.
No,
it's not the worst year ever. What are you bloody talking about? We've made huge productions in technology. Amazon's never done better than before because of all the social governments forcing it to Amazon, but whatever. That's been fun. The 2020 American elections, that's been fun. Look, Trump's trying to win this lawfare game. He's not going to win. He's not going to win. But it's been a fun run. We've had a great election here. We've seen the ACT Party grow more than it's ever grown before. We've seen Labour have a 50% majority, which is the largest majority that we've ever seen under MMP. So, congratulations, Jacinda. You're in charge now. Don't fuck it up.
Well, and in a way, nobody can be really upset about the results. You may hate the fact that Trump lost. He's still got 71 plus million votes. You may not like the fact that National lost, but you'll still concede they had a pretty poor showing.
I agree.
They fell into the exact same trap that Labour were in while National was in power. They constantly yap and criticise, yet they failed to provide any meaningful opposition. So they deserved it. It's not as bad as 2002, but they absolutely deserved it. So
they did. I'm sorry, Judith. I like you,
She
Judith.
wasn't the problem.
She was a little bit the problem. I like you, Judith, but you didn't rep very well. I don't think you did a particularly good job. God damn it, that Labour bloody politician at the Pukekohe debate, when you were there and she called you out and said you were going to get rolled for the next person, for Christopher Luxon probably. She's going to be right. And she got booed for that comment too, Judith.
We got 5 weeks, our generation, and everybody else who was non-essential. My goodness, to be essential, those 5 weeks, it was like being in purgatory. Seriously, I am a workaholic and I wanted nothing more than to have some kind of work to do. You know what I did during lockdown? I kept walking around the block in Ellerslie, constantly, over and over again, because I had nothing else to do. But really, looking back on that, this is a story we're going to tell our grandchildren, isn't it? We weren't called upon to go to war.
The great non-pandemic of 2020.
To give our lives for king or queen and country, whatever the case may be. We were called to sit around at home and do nothing. It worked, and hey.
Did it?
5 weeks off.
Did it really?
Oh, look, I know your position on COVID, but we don't have to go into that. These are good things about 2020.
Favourite moment of 2020? You're saying your favourite moment of 2020 was 5 weeks of publicly paid holiday on a wage subsidy?
I didn't say it was good in the long term. I said, in retrospect, it was good in the moment, and I stand by that.
Favourite moment of 2020? Having a lot more people round to my house for dinner. That was a lot more fun than cooking massive quantities of meat that I normally cook for myself. But that was a lot more fun. I enjoyed having a little bit more social interaction. I've been elected to a new board. That's been pretty damn good. I didn't think that was going to happen. My life has sort of improved this year. I think at a general position, I'm a lot better off. I've started a couple of new companies. I've started a podcast with Jared. This has been a lot of fun. I really like doing this. And I think it's important that more people get their views out there more often. And the offer is always open. If you message me in the comments, send me a message somehow. Come on. I want people that disagree with us. I don't want to be the only person here espousing my views all the bloody time. Jared and I are pretty close on that sort of thing, so this works. But we do want people that sort of agree.
Except for COVID.
There's enough similarities. Just Jacinda come around just before. Was that James Shaw?
Yes, that's right.
James Shaw, if you'd like to come on, I'd love to have you on. I think we're going to do some sort of, as the politics sort of dies down after the elections, I want to actually focus on a little bit more of an interesting topic. So maybe not my favourite thing of the year, but this is sort of the future of what I want to do with this podcast. Jared and I have got a good debate that we want coming up, and we've got a few friends that we want to invite on. It's not going to be politically based all the time. We're going to talk about more sort of religion, philosophy, and theocracy, and the way that things sort of work, because I think that's really fundamentally interesting. And I think we do have a really good debate topic coming up. I don't know. Let's say mid-December. I think Christmas is probably a good time to have that debate. I think it's probably quite topical.
So, on that note, well, we won't say have a very Merry Christmas because we'll have a couple more of these. But I do have a Christmas-related joke for everybody. Why is Santa so jolly?
Why, Jared? Why is Santa so jolly?
It's because he knows where all the bad girls live.
Ooh. Don't we all want to know that? Thanks very much for joining us for another week of The World Where We Live, and we will see you next week, all things going according to plan.
It's great to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Take
Good
care.
night, everybody.
Stay safe.